Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the LeanTossup College Football Podcast. What is this week? This is the final
13.
13. Yes, final week of the regular season here, week 13. Next week, obviously, this is rivalry week in college football. Many and I believe I do myself believe this is the best weekend of college football. Um, it is the week before the conference championship games, and then obviously right before the bowls. I am joined as always by my co-host at BuckMetrics on Twitter. How are you doing today on this Tuesday night?
I am just delighted that the podcast is back. Delighted to be co-hosting the sharpest college football podcast, and welcome you back to the pod. And looking very forward to catching up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I am back from my vacation. It was a very good vacation. I definitely needed that. And I'm back now, and we've got some college football to go through here, and it's gonna be a great weekend of college football. Obviously, for the Thanksgiving, this is Thanksgiving for Americans. Obviously, if you're Canadian, you also know that because we also get Black Friday sales, so you know American Thanksgiving is coming. But yeah, so this is probably the best week in college football. This is home to some of the greatest rivalries in college football: Michigan, Ohio State, Florida, Florida State, Alabama, Auburn, etc., etc. Some rivalries we've lost in the past, like Texas, Texas A&M. They're coming back in the future, but yeah, some of the best games are this weekend. So let's talk about last weekend. So last weekend was a little weird. A couple of kind of very odd results came out of last weekend. Some expected, some kind of unexpected. Um, let's walk through those right now.
Yeah. So the first one that I wanted to talk about, Michigan 19, Illinois 17. Really fun game. To your point, unexpected, not an unexpected result, but really how we got there and the margin was unexpected. Um, Valiant effort by Illinois. As I'm watching this game, I hadn't seen Michigan play for a long time, basically because they've played a bunch of just games that were not compelling. And I'm watching, I'm thinking, boy, JJ McCarthy just is, isn't really a great quarterback. Um, so I dug a little deeper, and what really stuck out is that my eyes did not deceive me. There's two JJ McCarthys. There's the JJ McCarthy of the first four games when Michigan played Colorado State, Hawaii, Yukon, and Maryland. His QB plus was 220 in those four games. Since then, he's faced Iowa, Indiana, Penn State, Michigan State, Rutgers, Nebraska, Illinois. Some good defenses, some crummy defenses, but overall his QB plus is down to 88. Um, so really interesting that once we just got to kind of a garden variety level of opponent, his play has come down. And what's really gratifying about that too is I don't know if you remember the preseason pod talking about the Big Ten. I made this point that Jim Harbaugh quarterbacks seem to just have a governor where they can't go over a QB plus of 120, and that is exactly where he sits right now. His
Hmm.
QB plus is 120 for the season.
Yeah, I mean it's fascinating, right? I mean when you look at this Michigan team is undefeated. Actually, they have a better record than they did at this point last year because at this point they lost last year. They lost to Michigan State. They're now undefeated going into the Ohio State game versus one loss last year. So they actually technically, on paper, are better than last year. But at the same point in time, when you look at Heisman odds, their running back is third. Their quarterback's nowhere to be seen on that, right? And we were
Hmm.
told at the beginning of this year, oh no, this quarterback's a massive upgrade over last year's quarterback, right? And yet somehow we're talking about the running back, which again is fine, but again that shows that like this team is still fundamentally limited. Now, does that particularly matter for next week? Not really. We're gonna talk probably about Michigan, Ohio State later, but yeah, this was somewhat unexpected. I mean, it's weird. We've seen Illinois just massively underperform the last 2 weeks. Like I think at one point you had tweeted out about Illinois winning the Big Ten West and bet it because then you have like this massive ticket you can, which was a very smart thing. I love that play. But then Illinois just decided to lose against what was it? Was it
They lost to Purdue,
yeah, and
and
then
they had
Minnesota.
another. Yeah, and neither was really particularly close.
Yeah, there
Couple
was
of bad weeks for them.
a couple of really bad weeks, but then I guess maybe this was them showing back up again. I will also somewhat excuse this loss by Michigan because again, you could be looking ahead to
Sure.
Ohio State. And again, even Ohio State didn't have the greatest game last weekend as well. They could have been looking ahead to Michigan too. So I somewhat excuse it. 19 to 17 is like right in that range where I'm like, that's a really close result there. That should not be that
Yeah,
close. But I could somewhat like I'm not the most concerned about Michigan after this result. I think they should be okay. But we'll have to see how it goes this weekend.
yeah,
No.
yeah.
What about the next one here? Next one was pretty crazy to see this one.
Yeah, this was nuts. South Carolina 63, Tennessee 38. South Carolina punted once all game, which, I haven't watched a lot of South Carolina games this year. I've caught a lot of South Carolina Twitter over the last few weeks just saying fire Satterfield, Marcus Satterfield, the offensive coordinator. He stinks. He's got to go. He's terrible. He's terrible. He's terrible. I honestly thought that maybe they had fired him during the week, and I just didn't see it as I was busy. Totally out of character. Kind of interesting data point here. Spencer Rattler has been having a horrible season. Come into this game, his QB plus was a 82. Um, this game is QB plus for this game was a 227. So what Tennessee's defense somehow did in a weird way to tie it back to the prior game, they turned Spencer Rattler into JJ McCarthy before he had to face really tough teams.
That's crazy. I mean, we had always talked about this Tennessee team being really good, and they are really good. But one of the problems that this team has had all year was this defense, right? The like they got Tennessee had massive leads against Alabama. Defense couldn't close it out, right? They still had to march down the field, last second field goal to beat Alabama. And
Hmm.
again, although at the time we were like, "Oh my God, that win is amazing! Tennessee's the best team in the SEC, and by extension, the country." That win looks kind of worse now as we every week that win looks a little worse as Alabama has lost to LSU, almost lost to Ole Miss, right? And again, you start looking at some of the other some of the other wins on Tennessee, right? Okay, they crushed LSU. That win actually looks amazing. So LSU does look pretty good, but again, they struggled to put away Florida. They only beat Florida by I think it was 3, right?
Hmm.
Like there are some kind of suspect games on this Tennessee schedule, especially if that defense allows teams back into games. And I was watching this game. I was on my flight back during these games, and I was watching some of this, and like I saw the line movement in this game, and I'm like, I very much considered betting Tennessee. I was like, they'll come back. Like I think it was in the third quarter, they were down 10. I'm like, they got this, right? They're gonna go score a quick touchdown. They'll get a defensive stop, score another touchdown. That just never happened. They just stalled out, and South Carolina just crushed them. And it's crazy. And again, this is where when we're now sitting here with at the 14 college football playoff, that's enough to eliminate you. They're done
Yeah.
now. They're out. That's you can't like had they beaten South Carolina, had they won out one loss SEC team from the SEC East that are only lost to the presumptive conference champion, they're probably going to the playoff. Now they're done. They're done. Maybe you go to the Sugar Bowl. Maybe I'm not sure if the Sugar Bowl is on this year or not. Depends. But you go to the equivalent of the Sugar Bowl. But no, it's like that's not good. And I have you really question. I mean, I don't know. Like I don't think you. I mean, Hendon Hooker's still pretty good, but like I don't know. This defense has just really let them down, and it's really sad to see. We could have had some difference and some variety in the college football playoff this year, but we're just not going to get that now because this Tennessee defense just really let them down.
Yep. And I said I thought the defense was going to be good enough, but man, they just in the biggest spots they've been like okay to really bad.
Yeah.
Um, so still nice season. I don't know if you saw Hooker's out for the rest of the season. He I think tore an ACL, unfortunately for
Ah,
him.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Another game in the SEC. Vandy beats Florida 31-24. I saw the end of this. You know, it wasn't even that close. Florida scored a late-ish touchdown to make it a one-score game, which doesn't really line up with they dominated yardage 445 to 283. I don't think it was really a turnover issue. It just seems like their mistakes were untimely and they settled for field goals and did just enough to lose. Weird game. And Vandy, I think they've won two SEC games in a row.
Yeah. It's a very puzzling statement you just said there. Uh, because they beat who else did they beat just recently? Was it Kentucky? Kentucky, right? They beat Kentucky and Florida. again, just a we Vanderbilt does just the weirdest thing sometimes. They're like, ah, just go beat Kentucky and then just go beat Florida. Like, is this team improving? Is this a team to watch for next year? I don't think Vanderbilt's bowl eligible, are they? Let me.
No, I think they've lost 7. Um, I mentioned about a month ago that they're just like run of the mill SEC bad and not like nationally horrible. So they've
Mhm.
improved, but I wouldn't expect them to kind of take that step up against those teams. I would think like logically be like, okay, we'll pick off like a you know, Missouri,
Mhm.
somebody like that in South Carolina. Um,
Oh, Vanderbilt is 5-6, so
wow.
they
Okay.
they
That
can. Oh, final game of the season against Tennessee.
Tennessee, yeah, with Joe Milton at quarterback.
Ooh, that's got me. What's the line? Let me see, because my model wouldn't have factored that in yet.
No, you ran it with Hooker. I saw that.
Yeah, well, my model automatically does that. Unfortunately, I didn't realize about Hooker. Tennessee minus 14. Ooh. Ooh, for bowl eligibility. Can you do it one more time? Maybe you can.
Why? I mean, nobody thought nobody probably outside of their locker room thought they could beat Florida. So
Well, at a certain point, does Tennessee just say we're done?
yeah, they
Right?
might have
Like
just
you're like, we
packed it
lost
up.
our quarterback. We lost the second game. We're not going to the college football playoff. We're not going to the SEC championship game. We're gonna go to some random bowl. Do you just like? How do you get your team up for this?
It's a rivalry game, I guess. That's
Yeah, but Vanderbilt thinks
kind
they
of a
can actually win, right? This is a rivalry game because they're both in the state of Tennessee. But
yeah,
like, if Vanderbilt actually thinks they can actually have a chance at beating Tennessee, Big Brother,
yeah.
it's tempting. I'm
It's
gonna
at
look at that.
Vanderbilt too. That's interesting too.
That's a little tempting. All right, we'll maybe
All right.
look at that
I
later.
don't know
But
if I'll
yeah,
join you on that, but good luck. I'll
I'm
wish you good luck.
I'll think about it. I'm gonna think about it. I'll sleep on that. But
Okay.
yeah,
Um, Georgia Tech beats North Carolina 21-17. Really weird. This game was even in yardage, yards per plays, turnovers, and penalties. Um, I would not have thought ever that if you told me Georgia Tech beat North Carolina that the offense was a problem, but they only scored 17 points. I'm wondering if this gets Brent Key, the interim coach, the full time job. Um, they've kind of been looking for a reason to give it to him, and then he had that really embarrassing loss to Miami, which just does not look surprisingly bad with any kind of context around it. But maybe he gets the job now. I don't know. I'd hate to see them settle. I'm not really a fan of going to the interim guy, but he's actually done a pretty good job with them. I mean, they're a lot better now than when they fired Collins or had ever been under Collins.
definitely. Yeah. I mean, again, this is another result from this week that was just so weird, right? You got North Carolina. They're cruising to their way to the ACC championship game, right? Only one loss.
Hmm.
Definitely could be Clemson. It definitely still can be Clemson too, to be fair. But like, just a horrible upset there against a team that they definitely should have been able to beat and beat soundly.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, just a weird weekend for some of these games. Such a
yeah,
weird, but yeah, I mean, I think Georgia Tech, they could they could maybe keep the interim coach there. That's definitely a possibility. I think. Yeah.
yeah. Hey, do me a favor. Next time you go on vacation, get some sleep. Okay, you sound kind of tired.
I'm a little tired. I'm okay though. I'm
Okay.
not gonna fall asleep. I'll be okay. But
Okay.
still a bit of jet lag there. I'm okay though.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. Pitt 28, Duke 26. I bring this up because even though Duke lost, Duke has the best point differential in the Coastal Division of the ACC. I don't think anybody would believe that without actually verifying that. It looks like
Yeah.
you might be verifying that right now. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll actually check that. But the thing is, it's like the ACC is so weird this year, right?
Yeah.
They've got like, let me see point differential here. It doesn't have exact point differential, but they have the most points, and yeah, they probably do actually have the most. Yeah, they have the best point differential. Or
In
no,
conference games.
in conference. Yeah, yeah, they would. Yeah, they do. Crazy that they're still ahead of. They have much better differential than Pittsburgh ahead of them, and better than UNC. Well, actually, very close to UNC, but still better than them. But no, this Duke team is actually like pretty good, right? We've talked about them a lot of times. We've definitely wanted to bet on them a bunch of times too. It's just that we've never they always seem to disappoint us at sometimes, right? And I think this is an example of them disappointing, right? It's a game they probably should have won. They didn't win, and yeah, I mean, this team will be very good eventually. I just this isn't their year. I don't think. Um, but yeah, I this UNC like this Duke team is actually pretty good. It's just that this Pitt team will do random
Yeah,
Pittsburgh things at
it's
times, right? So
Narduzzi things, yeah.
yeah.
Another ACC game, Clemson 40, Miami 10. I just bring this up because Miami had 98 total yards, 98, 2.1 per play.
So they ran 40 some oddish plays. That's pretty.
Yeah,
Like so. I was seeing this game. I didn't bet this game. My model had Clemson. Like I think the spread of this game was massive. I think it was like 21, I think, or 20 or something like that. The spread in this game was massive. Clemson minus 19. I didn't bet it, but at one point in the fourth, it looked like Miami might just squeak out a cover. I think it was like 26 to 10, and I was like, I didn't bet it, but I'm like, please just come on, Clemson, like cover the spread. Like I'm not a Clemson fan, but like just for the pure sake of it, just please cover this spread, make the model right. And sure enough, they were about to not do it. They were only winning by 16, but sure enough, they got two quick touchdowns at the end and did it. But man, though, like just such a like this Miami team, like obviously they're not going to fire Mario Cristobal this year, but like how close are they to firing Cristobal next year?
he's got that crazy contract. It's not public because they're a private school, but supposedly it's 10 years for like 90 million. So
Jeez. So
I don't know.
it's got probably got a long time left on it then, I guess.
Yeah, there might be. We might kind of see like a code red from A Few Good Men, where maybe just some ex players come in and just beat up Mario when he's in his bed. Um, I don't know what else you can't do if you can if you can't fire the guy.
I don't
Um,
know, just fine, dig up some scandal somewhere and be like, ah, cause there we go,
there you
the
go.
Les Miles way.
Yep. Louisville 25, NC State 10. Louisville is kind of, I don't know. They've been one of those crazy teams that they seem to have kind of gotten it together. Weirdly, we all know NC State. They lost their starting quarterback Devin Leary a few weeks ago. Louisville lost Malik Cunningham, and yet they pulled this one handily. And NC State, for some reason, was still ranked in the college football playoff rankings. And I think Louisville is now, based on the rankings that came out today, I think they snuck into like number 23.
Let me check.
So what could have been with the Cardinals if they just hadn't just been so psychotic?
Yes, they are 25 somehow.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, sometimes with some of these, like Louisville 7-4, they are one of two 7-4 teams. The only other 7-4 team, of course, it's Texas. Texas is the other. Like, what is it with the like? God,
I don't
why?
know. That
What?
they're counting the game against Bama as like a win or like a three-quarters of a win.
Well, and again, Alabama is seventh. Like, why? Like, this college football playoff committee, man. These things don't make sense. Like, Bama. Like, do you think Bama should be the seventh ranked team?
No, they've not looked that great.
No.
They've had a couple good games where they look great, which is you can say that about a lot of teams.
Well, I mean, okay, so obviously, so one, you have Georgia, two, Ohio State, Michigan, those are fine. Four, TCU, that's fine. Five, LSU, six, USC, that's fine. Debatable, you could flip them. I'd be okay either way, but that's
Hmm.
definitely fine. Seven, Alabama, but then who else, right? Eight, Clemson,
Yeah, that's
nine,
the thing. They're
Oregon,
kind of in that like, who else do we do? And I
yeah,
think they just kind of
yeah.
defy gravity because of their name.
That's the thing, right? The top 10 can't be six teams, right? Like you have some team has to be seventh, eighth, and ninth, and 10th, right? Like you can't. Yeah. That's the classic problem, right? You have to put 10 teams in the top 10. You can't put six in. Be like the top 10 is only deserving of six teams. Uh,
Yep.
but no, that's the thing, right? So no, I this Louisville team was really disappointing season. NC State, again, we talked about both these teams as potentially winning the ACC. I guess it's Clemson, North Carolina somehow, but it's just the ACC, man. It's just so, some of these teams who just really beat up each other, and Louisville and NC State, very clear examples of teams that have just massively underperformed expectations
Yeah,
this season.
there a lot of teams that are good enough to beat other decent teams, but not take that next step and be the
Hmm.
you know the best and consistently do
Yeah,
that.
they can win an individual game, but you ask them to string together a whole season of it, they just can't. They can't
Yeah.
do it.
Yep. All right. In the Pac-12, Oregon beats Utah 20-17. This was just I missed the first half because I was watching the end of the USC game, but I couldn't believe what I was seeing. 37 combined points, 670 total yards. I think USC themselves had more yards than that against UCLA. Um, the Oregon defense is below average for all of FBS, and Utah's defense is only slightly above average. I saw a great quote on Twitter about this during the second half. Somebody tweeted, "This game is like watching two guys fight each other with both hands tied behind their backs," and it was very, very true. Now, I came across some information that makes sense on one side of the ball. Apparently, Dan Lanning has taken over defensive play calling,
Mm.
which what took you so long, dude? Tosh Lapoy basically stinks and always has stunk and always will stink. So that explains some of it. I kind of don't get the other side of the ball though. Um, so maybe it's the Bo Nix injury. Maybe Bo Nix just had a bad Bo Nix day. I don't know. Um,
Well,
this I did not see this come. I actually had the over in this game. Yeah, so sorry.
That's
Go
that
ahead.
that yeah that's rough. I mean, I think with Bo Nix, some days you get the beautiful 50-yard passing touchdown bomb, and then other days you get this, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't have one Bo Nix to the others. Like Bo Nix averages two Bo Nix, but like the range of different Bo Nixes you can get on any day, you have to see you can't just limit that range. You have to see the full spectrum of Bo Nix. So no, I mean, I think Utah's defense is actually pretty good. So I think that might be one of the reasons why they're able to kind of bottle up Oregon. But again, this Utah team is another team that's just kind of massively underperformed, right? I mean, they lost to UCLA. They did beat USC. I think they lost to someone else in there. Florida lost to
They lost
Florida,
to Florida.
and then they've
Yeah.
lost to Oregon. I think they lost to someone else. They lose to
No, that's
Arizona.
it.
No, that's it.
That's it.
Okay.
Yep.
But no, that's it. Arizona covered the spread. But no, this Utah team, like people had really, really high hopes for this Utah team and Cameron Rising, and they've just not met that expectation at all. A lot of people thought Utah would be playing the conference championship game next week. They are definitely not doing that, right? So I think Oregon is a decent team. I think they've had really good moments, but then again, sometimes when you see the games when they lose to like Washington or something, and it's just not good, right? So I um I think right now I'd have USC as a favorite against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game,
Yeah.
but
I think you ran that and they were a small favorite.
yeah, they're a I think somewhat decent, not like a big favorite, but a favorite. Five, six, USC -6.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
have that. That seems about right, actually, to be honest. Um, but yeah, this Oregon team has I think this Oregon team has definitely improved this year under Lanning rather than with Mario Cristobal, but it's still not they're not like dominant force in the Pac-12 yet, and maybe that can happen next year. But you're gonna have another year of Caleb Williams. He'll get even better, right? So it's gonna be fascinating next year to see what this Oregon team will be able to do. And will Bo Nix be the quarterback? Are they gonna get a new quarterback, right? So I'm interested to see what this team can do next year. But there's still a lot of football team left just for this team to play as well. So we'll have to see.
Yep. Agree. Um, another Pac-12 game. Washington State beats Arizona 31-20. Arizona in just 7 days goes from beating a UCLA team that had legitimate playoff hopes to literally having their quarterback and wide receiver throwing punches on the sideline during the game. Um, what just I mean, just sad to see how that just turned really quick. And also want to mention that Washington State and Oregon State, you know they have sneaky good defenses. They're by far the only two good defenses in the Pac-12, and I think they're both overlooked.
Hmm. Yeah. Oregon State is interesting for me because again, obviously, this weekend is Oregon State, right? My model
Mhm.
actually does not have Oregon walking all over Oregon State. It actually has a very close game, which I
Yeah.
actually do believe. I'm not touching that. If I'm gonna bet that game, I'm betting Oregon State plus 3.5 or whatever. But yeah, those are the two really good defenses, right? Oregon State, of course, they covered the 6.5 against USC. That was one of USC's first close. Actually, that was their closest game of the season at the beginning of it, until
Yeah.
they lost to Utah. So this Oregon State team is actually pretty good, and Washington State's also a pretty good team too. Washington State will make a bowl. Arizona, unfortunately, will not. Arizona did actually have a pretty good season. They made some massive improvements in year two of Jed Fish. But unfortunately not making a bowl. And I'm actually kind of sad about that. This team deserved to make a bowl, but they just the schedule, man. Like they just had a really bad luck of some teams and they just couldn't their defense just really let them down in a couple of those games, like against Washington, against a lot of other teams. Their defense just let them down.
Yeah, they
Um
almost they gave USC a serious scare too.
I think they only lost by one score to USC.
They lost by one score.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one score to Washington as well. This team was actually pretty good. They deserve to go to a bowl. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to go to a bowl. But yeah, I mean, I think it's unfortunate that the quarterback and wide receivers are throwing punches, but I think they're all kind of frustrated in what happened with the season. Right? I think they all recognize that a couple of different plays go a different way. All of a sudden, you guys are bowl bound, right? So I think that's kind of the issue. That's why there's some tension there.
Yeah, they beat San Diego State and UCLA, who each are going to have at least 8 wins by the end of the season.
Mhm.
um, the big game was hidden on the Pac-12 network. Cal beat Stanford 27 to 20. I just bring this up because I remember in the preseason pod about the Pac-12, I just said, Cal or Stanford, who finishes ahead? And my analysis said Cal, even though it didn't feel right in my heart, and they actually they actually finished ahead of Stanford. Stanford will end up tied for last in the conference with Colorado, unless Colorado beats Utah, which I don't think anybody expects. Man, they I love David Shaw, but they got to make a change there.
Yeah, something is clearly off in Stanford. I don't know if it's Shaw or just the program in general. I don't know, but they got to do something there. That the program like and the thing is, it's so weird because people were like giving NFL draft buzz to their quarterback Tanner McKee, and they hadn't scored a passing touchdown like in 3 weeks. Like I don't understand. Like how can you give NFL draft buzz to some guy who hasn't scored a passing touchdown or like an offensive touchdown in his offense alone in like 3 weeks? Like I don't understand that at all. But apparently they were, and I don't. I think he's still on some quarterback big boards. But again, we're still far out from the NFL draft. But it just shows how weird this Stanford team is, right? Like you obviously they had a couple of drafted prospects. They obviously had Davis Mills. He's a Texan right now, but apparently he's about to be benched. So this Stanford team is able to produce a couple of good prospects, but outside of that, they seem to be really struggling to have other decent prospects outside of maybe just some random quarterbacks, and that's a problem I think for this team going forward. You need to have deeper talent pools than just like, yeah, we have an okay quarterback every once in a while.
Yeah, they lost EJ Smith, Emmett Smith's son. I think that really was probably about the last of any hope they had of having a decent offense.
Yeah,
Doesn't explain their defensive problems though. Okay, in the Big 12, Oklahoma beats OK State 28 to 13. I just bring this up because both of our models loved Oklahoma here. I've been saying for like about 6 weeks that my model had Oklahoma State as the worst team in the Big 12. Even before that, you were saying you just didn't believe in them. They were just fraudulent. So
yeah, because they started
this,
what 5-0, right, or something.
yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Yeah, they
Yeah,
were like in the top 10 for through a decent amount of the season
yeah,
into
that
October.
yeah, we were like, there is no way this is like we were like, this is wrong. We literally said, do not do this. People who do rankings do not put Oklahoma State here. And sure enough, they lost to was it Kansas? Was their first loss? Who's their first loss? Like someone crushed them, and then they just started losing after that. Who was their first big loss?
I think it was Kansas. Let me check here real quick.
No, it was. I don't think it was Kansas. I think it was
TCU.
TCU. Yeah, TCU. It was a close game against TCU though. But
Yeah.
then yeah, TCU beat them, and then Kansas crushed them. Yeah, so
Yep. They were actually Oklahoma State was they're number 8 at that time.
Yeah, but no,
They're not number 8 now.
they are not number 8 now, no. But, like, no, yeah, it was weird, like, this game was, like it was, like, the 28-13 line, that doesn't even seem right, like, this game was a lot further apart, like, I think there's probably a late Oklahoma State touchdown in there too.
Yeah.
Like, because I remember looking at this game and, like, I was like, "Oh, I bet the -7," and I just looked at this game, I'm like, "Oh, that's right, this game is on." I looked down, it was like 21 to 3, I'm like, "Oh, okay, we're good, we're good." Um, because I was a little worried. Cause like 7 is a lot of points in the
In a
Big
rivalry
12.
game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rivalry Big 12 game. And I look down, I'm like, oh, okay, we're fine, we're good. And sure enough, right? So yeah, no, it's yeah, Oklahoma State not a good team, and Oklahoma is also randomly a good team some weeks, right? Like some weeks they'll actually be a good team, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
I think Oklahoma is a little underlooked. I mean, obviously they got crushed by Texas, but I think this team is not as bad as some people think it is, but also at the same time, just has had some really rough weeks this year. So,
I think, yeah, to that point, I think they're the sign of a bad team is that it's inconsistent. I think they basically fall in that category. I think
hmm
that they're not just objectively just like horrible.
hmm
If we're gonna get to our proper adjectives here, I guess.
yeah,
Also in the Big 12, Iowa State loses to Texas Tech 14-10. Just bringing this up, Iowa State's defense is totally under the radar and it's sneaky, sneaky good. I have them sixth in FBS. They've been kind of an under machine for the last few weeks here.
hmm
I think that's coming out of nowhere. That's one of those things. After the conference championship weekend, I'm going to do my end of the season awards, and their defensive coordinators. I got to do some research on if this is expected or not. I don't remember expecting this, but his last name's Heacock. He might be up for a BuckMetrics assistant coach award,
hmm
and especially when it's like the sneaky good like that.
hmm yeah. That's true. Yeah, this Iowa State team, this poor Iowa State team, right? Like last year, they go to the Cheez It Bowl against Clemson, right? And that's kind of a farewell to a lot of their seniors. And then this year,
Yeah.
like they're in on defense, they're a lot better. Their offense is worse, but like this team definitely doesn't deserve this fate of what has befallen them. Um, but
Um, you know what? I watched a lot of that game just because I had the under, and I have to say, disagree a little bit. Their offense still deserves every bit of bad news that happens to this team. The
that's
defense deserves to be, on like a USC kind of situation. The offense should be basically, banished to, I don't know, New Mexico State.
that's fair. Yeah, I mean, they'll be back next year. Give them a couple more years to reload. But again, you may actually have Matt Campbell take another head coaching job somewhere potentially. So we'll have to
True.
see. But yeah, it's I'm excited to see what this team could do next year. Their season's done. They're not going to a bowl, so we'll see what they could do next year.
Yeah. Um, Random Big Ten game. Very Big Ten West. Wisconsin 15, Nebraska 14. I see a score like this, and there's one thing I want to look at. And here it is. Graham Mertz, 8 of 18 for 83 yards.
Just
I'm going to actually
amazing.
clap on the podcast for that.
Yeah, just amazing. How do you even get 15? Was there a safety?
Yeah, I don't know. I
It's
really had no reason to watch this game.
that they know that's completely fair. I also did not watch this game, but I was definitely following the scores. Um, no, I mean again, it's Nebraska, like Nebraska and Wisconsin again. Do you think they keep their head coach after this season, or do you think they say
I've heard from the people who follow this closely that they think this might have gotten him the job. Now, Jim Leonard, I'm gonna argue that if winning a game 15-14 over an interim coach, granted it's on the road, but if you win a game 15-14 and that gets your interim guy the head coaching job, I'm gonna just not to relive my anger of about a month and a half ago, but I don't think he made the right choice of firing Paul Christ.
mhm. No, and again, not when your quarterback goes 8 for 18, right? And actually, it's interesting. Braylon Allen didn't get the most carries in the game. He actually Ches Malusi got more carries. So the breaking news: there was not a safety. There was two Wisconsin touchdowns, and they tried two-point conversions, and they failed both of them. So that explains how we got to 15-14, which is again amazing, big
It's-
Big Ten score line.
yep.
Classic Big Ten. Um, I mean, it was the best. Like yeah. So they said that this game gives him the head coaching job. Wisconsin was favored in this game by 10 points.
It's I yeah, I I'm just gonna recuse myself. I'm too upset. I'm just a Paul Chris truther. I'll just keep it at that.
I mean, could you imagine being like you're favored by 10 points in the game, you barely win it, and you're like, "That's our guy. That's our guy right there.
Yeah.
That's him. That's
But
our guy."
and you're coming back and you're chasing points and that you're going for two and failing,
Yeah,
which of course, because you're in the Big Ten West, that's what you do. Um, and that puts you over the hump.
this
And they
isn't even.
lost the week before. I think they lost the week before to Maryland, right? I
I
think they
think,
got.
yeah.
Is that who they played?
No, I maybe it was Maryland. It was paired Iowa. No, Iowa. They lost to
Iowa. Yeah,
Iowa,
Iowa beat them. Yeah, 24 to
which is
10.
arguably worse.
Yeah.
Actually, it's definitely worse. Um, but yeah, no, it's crazy that you're sitting there thinking, man, we won by 1 point. We were favored by 10 against Nebraska team that also fired their head coach. That's our
Yeah.
guy.
No, Paul Chryst like beat USC like a drum in the Holiday Bowl. He took them to a New Year's Day bowl. Well, this guy beat Nebraska by one. All right. Yeah, give him the job. Upgrade.
Crazy, crazy Wisconsin.
Yeah. Okay. I'll be back in love with them next year. But I need a break from them. Some great G5 scores. App State beats Old Dominion 27-14. Old Dominion covers. And I didn't know this, but my guy Ollie Jennings is out for the season. He missed this game and still Old
Mm.
Dominion covered. Didn't know why he didn't have a catch. Looked into it, but they still covered. Good luck to him when he transfers to, I don't know, Tennessee probably. I'm just going to throw that out there. Um, Here we go. Navy 17, UCF 14. We've been saying for like weeks now. Good luck figuring out this UCF team. Hey, guess what? Good luck figuring out this UCF team.
Yeah, I literally said on the Google Doc podcast we did last week. I'm like, I know this implosion is gonna come, and sure, like again, fantastic implosion, right? Like it's extremely hard to lose to Navy. Well, not like they obviously you can lose to Navy, but like it's generally people have not been losing to Navy a lot this year. And sure enough, they lose by a field goal to Navy. So yeah, like I don't like what I how is this team the best team in what is it, Conference USA? Like, I don't understand how this team is so hyped. Like, people were like, "Oh, this UCF team is good." It's like, no, their quarterback is awful. Like,
Can't throw the ball.
no, like you. They're like,
I
"Oh, this UCF team is great." Like, they're gonna have to make some improvements before they go to the Big 12 next year. Which obviously they can do for sure. But like, if this is the quality of the team, they're really gonna
yeah.
struggle in the Big 12.
Yeah. Agree. Also in the American, Tulane beats SMU 59-24. I think SMU is going to be looked really, really overlooked at the end of this season, and that's another thing I want to do after I don't know after the at some point in December, just do kind of like a notebook thing of like what my first notes are of looking forward. SMU stands out to me that they're 6-5, so they're going to be completely unremarkable to almost everybody. But they're five losses at Maryland, a Power Five team, at TCU, number 4 nationally, at UCF, psychotic, and they probably got really good UCF that night. At Cincinnati, top 25, and Tulane, now top 25, and I think they are back in the top G5 spot. So those teams have a combined record of 42-12. The SMU offense, I have a seventh in all of the G5. So um, just first data point that I think SMU could be sneaky team to sneak up on some teams next year.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with that. This SMU team has definitely been overlooked, but the problem is that in a lot of these games they just really have not been covering spreads. Like they sometimes will cover like you'll get like I remember against like Maryland they were like plus 3.5 and Maryland beat them by a touchdown. TCU I think it was like 6 maybe and they won by 2 touchdowns. So like they're good and their losses have been to good teams, but they really got unlucky in those losses. And I think again when you look at like luck metrics year over year, I think SMU is going to be a team that's definitely going to pop on that as well. So
Yeah.
we'll have to see.
Well, and look at this again. Maryland, TCU, Tulane, or yeah, Maryland, TCU, Tulane, UCF, and Cincinnati. Of those five, four are going to be Power Five teams next year. Meaning necessarily of those five, three were in conference, two of which are not going to be a problem next year.
Hmm.
Um, kind of a as much as I love Tulane and own a Tulane shirt and think they have the best logo in all of college football with the angry wave, um, maybe they're a little overhyped, and maybe SMU is just the sneaky smart guy play.
Hmm.
We'll see what smart guy college football Twitter has to say about that.
For next year, for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of sneaky smart guy college football Twitter, Western Michigan 12, Central Michigan 10. Um, I watched this at the gym and it was tremendous just so I could see our guy, one half of the Bourget brothers duo. Trayson Bourget was just peak Trayson Bourget, 7 of 19 for 102 yards.
That's a Grant Mertz stat line right there.
It is. All right.
God, just yeah, just with this was the snow game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just I saw some clips of that on Twitter. It just the snow, just so much snow. Um, just crazy that that game was just absolutely crazy. But yeah.
Great support by the student section. I think that game was at Central.
Hmm.
That was really cool. I mean, that was a miserable looking game, and the student section showed up.
Hmm.
Big props to them.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I just wanted to reset the top QB plus quarterbacks based on my metric here. Interesting names here. A good mix of who we know and who is a little bit surprising. So 1 through 11. You'll see why I'm going through 11. Grayson McCall of Coastal Carolina. CJ Stroud, we know. Hendon Hooker, Drake May. Number 5 is Todd Centeio from James Madison, who's kept it up all season. Good for him. Followed by Caleb Williams. 7, Dylan Hopkins of UAB. What a wasted season for them, unfortunately, of a great, great season that he had. 8 is Curtis Rourke of Ohio. We'll talk about them in part 2, but that came out of nowhere for me. 9 is, I guess, the composite of the good Bo Nix and the bad Bo Nix. 10, Max Dugan. And this is really what I wanted to take this to number 11. Number 11 is Jason Bean,
Mm.
the backup quarterback for Kansas. Really
Hmm.
good job, Lance Leipold. I love you, Lance Leipold. Just an awesome. That is a guy who can coach. Um, I also bring up the top quarterbacks because my guy. I don't know if you've seen this. My guy for Heisman futures has only 2 names up there now. Stroud at minus 120 and Caleb at minus 110. Are you seeing the same? This seems a little weird to me.
I've got similar, not exactly that. Let me just call that up super quick here. I've got Stroud minus 125, Williams plus 125, but then I've got other ones. I've got Blake Corum 14 to 1, Jalen Daniels LSU 50 to 1, Max Dugan 50 to 1, Bo Nix 50 to 1, Stetson Bennett 66 to 1 for some reason, Drake May North Carolina 100 to 1, Bryce Young 100 to 1, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Ohio State 150 to 1. So similar. It's basically a two-horse race, I think, at this point, which is okay to me because I had a bunch of Caleb Williams futures, and basically the bets on Blake Corum and Max Dugan were trying to bail those futures out, so it's fine. But yeah.
Here's an idea. You hit a really random name there, and I didn't even think about him. Although yeah, we'll get back to that later time. Um, if we or if somebody wanted to take Georgia money line in the SEC championship game, couldn't you just hedge that with a small bit on Jalen Daniels to win the Heisman? Seeing as if he wins that, he actually might pull it off. I don't know.
Well, that's fair, but the thing is, I feel like if well,
You're
see,
also betting on like a Stroud kind of crap, and we're going to come to that in a bit. And CJ
mhm.
and Caleb Williams just imploding.
Well, I mean, so remember from the podcast a couple weeks ago, everybody who's won in the college football playoff era,
Mm,
everybody who's won a Heisman has gone to the college football playoff, right? So at that point, does USC have to go to the playoff for him to win it, right? And there's definitely a path for Caleb Williams to do that. But is there a path for Jaden Daniels to go to the college football playoff though if they beat Georgia, right? If they beat Georgia, it actually
I
probably
think
helps
they're
USC.
totally in there. Yeah.
Well, okay, so say they beat Georgia, what's the playoff then? Is it what is it? Is it US? Is it Michigan Ohio State winner?
You're
TCU?
way overthinking this.
Who is it then?
It doesn't even matter. SEC champion always, 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 always gets an invite.
Well, but then does Georgia go?
Doesn't matter.
Does it?
SEC champion, like I said, they're always going to be in that top four. Don't forget when LSU won the title last
Yeah.
under Les Miles, they were a two-loss team, and they made
No,
the
I remember.
BCS title
Remember
game.
they did win under Ed Orgeron too. But you're saying
Yeah,
under Les Miles though.
under
Yeah,
Miles. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, I
they were
remember
a
that.
two-loss team, and they went
Hmm.
to number two. So they will find a way. I
But
think.
then, so then, well, like they've got to keep Georgia in there then too, right? Because they're gonna say, oh, Georgia beat
Yeah.
Tennessee, I guess. So then it'd be what? It'd be LSU, Tennessee. Assume TCU wins out, and then what? The other Big Ten team.
You don't need to fit the puzzle together. I'm just telling you this piece is in the puzzle.
Okay, so you just say they're 100% making it. So, well,
If he wins that game, yeah, now would
yeah.
that be enough to get him the Heisman? I don't know. It's interesting. It sounds outsized, but it doesn't sound outsized because he was literally not on the grid, but like 3 weeks ago.
Hmm. What
Just a
about
thought.
what about to make playoffs? LSU is 6-1 to make the playoffs, and money line is 475.
Well, they
Well,
still have to beat A&M this week.
okay, I guess that that's a combined.
I actually have that pretty close, but
That's a plus 120. That's
I
basically a
know
plus
A&M's been having a magical season. They could be very difficult in this last game of a great season that they're really excited about.
that they barely beat UMass. Beat what 125 basis points for a win against Texas A&M. That seems. I assume those go to parity after this game, but that seems really low.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right. Well, yeah, okay.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's fair. Yeah, I mean it's not bad. I'd probably just hedge out with like LSU to go to the playoff futures, but I actually do kind of like LSU in that game though. I would not be betting Georgia money line. 'Cause what's Georgia money line? It's probably like something ridiculous, like yeah, minus 650. I'm not betting 65 or $650 on that to win $100. That's not happening.
Yeah. Yep. All right. The other end of my QB plus is the bum list. Just a couple of names here. Aiden O'Connell, number 11. What a disappointing season for him, and yet
Yeah,
Purdue's still looking at winning 8 games this season. Wonder what they could have done if he actually had shown up this season. Number 10, Robbie Ashford of Auburn. I guess if you start the season behind TJ Finley on the depth chart, that's to be expected. I don't know. And then Trayson Bourget, not to pick on the poor guy, but just want to say that he would actually make number 6 on the list if he had enough attempts to qualify. But we're just going to include him because we love the guy. um,
yes.
my top receivers metrics. Dorian Singer. I don't remember if I mentioned just what a badass this guy is after the USC game. He made an incredible one-handed catch, and he was pretty much unstoppable. I have him as 8th in the country. Did not make the semifinalist list for the Blitnikoff Award, which is a shame because he's definitely one of the best receivers. I also want to point out I got into it with kind of like a Royal Rumble with some Utah fans today who were saying that Dalton Kincaid, their good tight end, should have been a finalist or semifinalist for the Blitnikoff Award. And I just want to point out 59 players have more yards receiving than Mr. Kincaid. And of those 59, 50 average more per catch. So
Hmm.
sorry, great game against USC. He completely ate us up and embarrassed us. That doesn't mean that you're a semifinalist for the Blitnikoff Award. Move on, Utah. Just enjoy the fact that you won. Do you have some audio to play me in here?
Yes. Give me 1 second.
The
That's
Kona
an
will have you cheering.
it's an ad.
during
Oh
the
no.
season to cheer.
Okay,
Uh-oh.
1 second. It's got an ad for the. We just got a random ad for the Kona. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The USC update. A great win, 48-45 at the Rose Bowl. I had this actually UCLA by 2, 37-35. USC wins 48-45. Brought to mind the last time this game was at the Rose Bowl in 2020 in front of nobody due to COVID. UCLA took a 38-36 lead with only 52 seconds left in the game, and yet they lost 43-38. That is two soul-crushing losses. The last two times this game has been in the Rose Bowl. Um, Very, very tough time for UCLA. I hope they got a lot out of that ass kicking they put to USC last year, because it's been sandwiched by two tough ones. If somebody's really wondering what really happened in this game, I have found the culprits. About an hour and 10 minutes into the game, I got a text from a UCLA buddy who was at the game, and he just randomly fired a shot. And he said, "Hey, what happened to former number one overall recruit Corey Foreman? Not good enough for this vaunted USC defense?" USC or UCLA was up 21-10 at that point. And 1 hour and 16 minutes later, the same Mr. Foreman makes the interception to put the game away and seal the victory for USC. And I can just tell you, folks, I told my friend I found Corey Foreman for him, and you should just check the replay if he wants to see more of Mr. Foreman. So where do we stand right now? Caleb Williams is sixth in QB plus with a 149 rating. The offense I have as sixth in all of FBS. Jordan Addison in this game has shot up from unranked to 34th in my receiving metrics. He had insane stats, was just dominant. The defense kind of remains where it's been for about a month, rated just a little bit over average, 59th in all of FBS. I have USC now first overall in the Pac-12 with a 10.4 power rating, ahead of UCLA, and about 3.5 points over Oregon. I think you said that you had USC about 6 better, so
Yeah,
we're pretty
that's about
close
right.
there.
Yeah.
So that's where we stand coming into this week after last week's game. So what are we looking at this week? USC is, last I checked, is giving 5.5 to Notre Dame. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's about right.
Okay. This was my worst point spread prediction in the preseason pod. I thought that USC would be a 12-point dog. Totally missed that. I can't blame it all on the quarterback that got hurt, Bryson Buckner, because he wasn't that good, and his backup is kind of about the same as Mr. Buckner is. So what is Notre Dame? They struggle on offense. They're only 52nd in FBS, according to my metrics. Drew Pine, the quarterback, is 55th in QB plus. So not a great offense. They've been running the ball a little more as of lately, and with more success. But on the season, they're only 50th in yards per rush. So their offense, unless they just dominate the line of scrimmage, which I think we thought UCLA was going to do, and UCLA didn't really run the ball that well. I don't know if the offense is something to be too concerned about. I don't think anybody's going to confuse Mr. Pine, their quarterback, with Dorian Thompson-Robinson of UCLA. So I think that there's chances to kind of put them more in a one-dimensional box.
Mm-hmm.
What they do the best is defense. I've got them as a plus 5.0, which is 21st in FBS. Until I did this a little bit of research, I was very confident in a victory by USC coming up. And then I looked at what USC has faced. The best defense that USC has faced all season is Oregon State, who was right behind Notre Dame, 22nd in FBS. And you might recall that was Caleb Williams' by far worst game. That was USC by far's worst game on offense. So I am still expecting a victory, but I'm nowhere near as confident as before when I started doing the research for this USC update. My model has this USC 36, Notre Dame 26. We'll see. The 10 points is maybe optimistic, maybe not. Let's see. I don't know. What do you think?
I have this as, I think, closer. Let me just see here. Yeah, I've got USC -2. So
Okay.
I know where you were.
Yeah.
I've got this is pretty high scoring. I've got this USC 31-29. So kind
Interesting.
of interesting. Um, I do worry a little bit about USC for this. This could be a little bit of a letdown game, but this team is pretty good. I'm not the most worried about a letdown game for them. It would be really sad if they did, because that would end my Heisman futures and USC to the USC to the playoff futures. So I want them to win this game. And to be fair, they are favored in this game. They should win this game, but I think the 5.5 might be a little too much. But
Yeah.
then again, they could just win this game by a touchdown, right? And we can call it a day, right? So I'm staying away from this game. I'm definitely gonna want to watch this game though. It's definitely gonna be a good game, but I'm not gonna bet it. I don't think.
Yeah, USC hasn't beaten Notre Dame since 2016, so I'd be hard pressed to think there's going to be a letdown here. There might be a little bit of look ahead to the Pac-12 championship game, but I can tell you that to the extent that players around any students or alums, they're going to be hearing a lot about, my God, you guys need to, you got to show up. I'm tired of getting all this crap you know, from the fine people such as our buddies at the Four Horsemen Pod.
Hmm.
So, all right, club hot seat. Just one little update here. West Virginia coach Neil Brown, they hurried up and made some spot for him, just like in the scene in Goodfellas. They put a table for him right in front in prime position. I don't think is for long. His athletic director was fired while you were out,
Hmm.
and so he's got basically no lifeline. He's got a big buyout, but apparently that's not going to be a problem from what I've heard. So we might be seeing the last of Neil Brown at West Virginia this upcoming Saturday. The G5 focus. It just seems that the committee is defaulting to the American being the best conference. All these teams that are in the how do I say this? All the G5 teams that have been ranked are from the American, and I don't know if this is just a default position where the committee's just saying, "Hey, the American's the best of the G5, and that's it." I'm still coming up with the Sun Belt being a better conference, and I will just say, without getting too much detail, look at the resume of South Alabama and compare it to Cincinnati, and tell me how Cincinnati really has a much stronger case than South Alabama when it comes to rankings. They're pretty much the same. South Alabama acquitted themselves better against their Power Five opponent UCLA than Cincinnati did against Arkansas.
Hmm.
All right. Update on my futures bets. Do you have the other audio?
Yep. One
Are
second.
we going to add for like a casino or something? Or
I will avoid that now. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
okay. Um, and boy, if you look up this one on YouTube, this video goes for an hour. If you are just wanting to make yourself hallucinate,
Yeah.
great song. I love it. Rocky Top, probably my favorite SEC fight song. So playing them because since our last podcast, the Tennessee future bet went over for season win totals, as did South Alabama over, as did UNLV over, as did Kansas State over for conference wins, and my buddy Sark went under for this season. Thank you, Sark. Not all great for the futures bets though. Clemson went under, is in the bin. Liberty under, finally went under. The Oregon under is no longer in play. That's a loser. Georgia Southern, screw you, Clay Helton. That Nebraska loss, screw you, Scott Frost, is all the difference. And Old Dominion's not going to make the over. That's a losing ticket as well. For the conference championship tickets I have that are still alive, I still have North Carolina to win the ACC at 18-1. South Al needs some help. They need an improbable loss by Troy to Arkansas State. But if Troy loses and South Al wins and South Al makes the Sun Belt title game, have them at 15-1. Kansas State win and you're in. Or if Texas loses and Kansas State is in, I have them at 10-1 to win the Big 12. And that is all I have for part one.
Yeah. All right. So join us in for part two, where we'll give out our Doozy Awards. We'll do a deep dive, and then we'll give our picks for next week. So not next week, this week. A lot of really really good games this week. A lot of good games. We're gonna have some takes on it, and you're not gonna want to miss this. So stay tuned for part two, guys. See you then.